Now, see, how do we establish the connection of what? So, I'll get into why you got interested in this subject, why you chose to write this book, and all a little bit. But, like, what is the main aim here when we are talking about someone being influenced by X or Y or Z ideology, right? Like, आप यदि point A से point B को connect कर रहे हैं, so what is the cumulative evidence? It can't be just one meeting, minutes of the meeting, right? So what is the other corroborating evidence?
So there are two very strong statements made by two Nazis, and it's an affidavit which came out during the trials, and it was recorded. And in those affidavits, we can come to know that Grand Mufti of Jerusalem has been said to be very close to each and every Nazi leaders, and he's constantly in touch with them when the plan for the final solution is cooking up. Now, I am not going with the idea that he was the one who did everything. It cannot be the case because this was a big step, some giant step, and it cannot happen just with somebody comes and says that, and people will choose to do. ऐसा नहीं होता है. Of course, Eichmann was involved, Himmler was involved, and there were many other top Nazi leaders who were involved. And now, in the affidavits which came out later on, and those affidavits speak strongly about Grand Mufti of Jerusalem being one of the man who is responsible for the planning of the final solution. They don't talk about Holocaust because obviously that word was not in the parlance. It was the final solution which they were talking about. So it does not appear in that meeting with the Hitler. In the Hitler's meeting, you can just see that Hitler is in all of admiration for the Grand Mufti, and Grand Mufti is buttering Hitler as much as he can. That's what it looks like. Hitler has admiration for Grand Mufti, but not as much as Mufti has for Hitler. Right? He is more like buttering Hitler to get his things done, and Hitler just gives him an assurance that yes, things will be taken care of. We will think about your independence. Your independence movement will also be taken in consideration, but not much was spoken in that meeting. But apart from that, if you go to, I think it is the Appendix 1 or Appendix 2, if I'm not wrong, probably it is Appendix 1 only, where the first affidavit appears there. So this I'll just tell you that what is that affidavit as well.
बता वो बहुत important है because until you don't share that affidavit, this honestly, this is why I'm starting in such an absurd way is because मेरे को बहुत खुजली हो रही थी उसके बारे में. इसके लिए मैं सबसे पहले ये क्वेश्चन पूछूंगा, बाकी सब बाद में करेंगे.
So this is Andres Stener's affidavit about Dieter Valenci's. He made some comments, and these are the Nazis. And when you go to the appendix 1 of it, you will find that I have provided. So it was very tough to get the archival document is not very readable. I just could get a Xerox of it and it's pasted. So maybe that German is not very legit. But I also was able to get the hold of the English translation, and this English translation was done long back in 1946 itself, based on that affidavit. So that affidavit makes it very clear that, and it's a notarized document, and it is said the following person appeared before me, Dr. Vladimir Pivko, notary public in Vasia at the place and the on the day. So this is talking about the notary, where the notary has happened, like about the affidavit. Then there is a declaration that who that person is about. I, the undersigned, Ing Arch Andres Tenner, resident in the Tat Kransha Lomnica, engaged in talks in the year 1943 to 44 with the German consultant for Jewish affairs at Slovak government, and his name is Dieter Valency, member of the German legation in Bratislava. I did so at the behest and as a member of the Jewish working group in Bratislava, whose chosen task was to represent Jewish interest and which was also in regular contact with the function with the component of the Jewish authorities in Switzerland and Palestine and group Gizi Fleischmann. So he is talking about Dieter Walensky's comment, which he had come across because he's the one who is dealing with the Jewish affairs, And Dietrich Wilinski is the person who is also responsible for the Jewish affairs, but in a negative way. And then he goes on to explain that I will read that part also where he's talking about the Grand Mufti. Valency informed me, referring to a consultation he had with Eichmann, that a Palestine as a destination of possible immigration was of the question, or at least would not be formally indicated. When I asked about the reason for this, he asked me with a laugh whether I did or not yet the heard of the Grand Mufti by the name of Husseini. He stated that Mufti was in very close contact and cooperation with Eichmann. Eichmann is the main guy who is dealing with the final solution. And for that reason, to avoid being repudiated for the eyes of the Mufti, the final destination of Palestine could not be accepted by German authority. And in this very affidavit, further he goes on to explain that in this further talk, Valency provided additional details about cooperation between Eichmann and Mufti. He stated that Mufti was an implacable arch enemy of the Jews and had been long been a champion of extermination of the Jews. He said that Mufti also constantly pursued this idea in his talks with Eichmann, who was in known a German born in Palestine. He said that Mufti was also one of the initiators of the systematic extermination of the European Jews by the Germans, and that in the implementation of this plan, the Mufti had been a constant associate and advisor of Eichmann and Himmler. So this is one of the three affidavits. So this is the affidavit which appears in appendix. But there are two more affidavits which I have partially quoted while I'm talking about this case, that perhaps it's Grand Mufti of Jerusalem who ignited the fire of the final solution, or if not ignited, he was certainly a man who was part of it. And it got my interest, Kushal, because see, everyone was tried for the as a war criminal. The Nazis were tried, but Mufti somehow could escape it. He was never tried, and there were a lot of tall Palestinian leaders, so the Free Palestine movement leaders, who could never be tried. So now, see, when the case comes today that something is happening in Gaza, the things go wrong, there's a humanitarian crisis, we all feel bad for it being a human beings. We always feel bad of it. It's not that we don't feel bad about it.
No, I just want to put it on record. I've always been a consistent supporter of the government of India stand on the Israel-Palestine issue.
Yes,
I've
I
actually
know.
I've said
Yes,
it multiple times on my own podcast. I don't and it doesn't please my Israeli friends who, and they know I'm very pro-Israel. But my stand on the Israel-Palestine issue is whatever the government of India says. I've been
yes,
very consistent on that.
yes,
But the
and
truth has to come out. It
yes.
doesn't matter who gets hurt in the process.
Yes, and what is very interesting that Israel was always pro to the two-state solution. Also, it's not that Israel was not, but it was constantly being rejected by the Palestinian leadership. It was only in the 90s, when early 2000s, when Yasser Arafat got a bit pacifist, and perhaps he was getting older, and there were many other political reasons why he chose that. Okay, maybe that two-state solution is a thing, but largely, if you see that Palestinian leadership was always against the two-state solution, right from beginning, they were never pro to it. And as far as the Indian state policy is concerned, I do agree that it is very good policy in a way that they have agreed to the two-state solution. But I would say that somehow in the initial days, it was a bit too pacifist, because it was not even ready to accept Israel as a nation. Formally, in a very serious manner, it recognized it only in 1990s. Though in 1952, one small partial recognition had happened.
No,
Though
that's
Israel,
not that on the Modi government front, the Modi government has clearly tilted towards Israel. There is no
yes,
problem in it.
yes,
Admitting that,
yes,
yes.
yes, yes,
And in my opinion, yes, the Modi government's tilt towards Israel is right.
yes,
But the tilt towards Israel is not going to be how, an average Israeli would expect it to be.
yes. It will be about our national interest at the end of a day, and it's not non-alignment, but the point is that we are very pro-India. We are not. We are only aligning towards India,
On
and
the
that's the policy.
Israel-Palestine conflict, the Modi government is very pro-Israel. It is very
Yes, it is.
obvious.
It's a very
It is very
pro-Israel.
obvious. Is it not like, see, we are objective analysts of Indian government policy. What? It's not like we want one or the other. It's like we are just stating what
Yes,
the governments are stating, right?
yes, yes. So apart from that, there are two more. affidavits which I have part quoted as the chapter goes. In fact, it appears in the prologue itself, because I think prologue is also long, because I was writing it when almost whole the book was done, and I just wanted to give a very thorough introduction to the people, that even if you don't read the book, even if you read the prologue, at least you get, that what we are up against, or rather, if I put it this way, that what are the kind of civilizations or the world which exist around us, right? And the most evil man of that era, Hitler, if you look him that way, one of the most evil man, he chose to side with the cause. Of course, he had his own reasons, he had his own political ambitions, but he saw a lot in the theology too. He had a lot of compassion for the theology which came to the Islam, and that made him pro-Islamist. Islamist
Yeah, yeah,
really,
we'll come to that later.
yes,
But see, I'll explain why I started so abruptly with this appendix, because the meat of your book is actually about this appendix and the corroborating documents around this appendix. If we don't talk about these appendices, people will not even understand what we are talking about in the book. That's the
yes,
problem.
yes, and so that's why I choose to place it verbatim. As far as this one of the affidavit is concerned, I have put the record of the Grand Mufti meeting with the Hitler too, where he gives the assurance, and the meeting is very cozy. And what's very interesting is that when the talks about my book has been going on, and the point has been made that perhaps it gives some idea that Grand Mufti was behind the final solution, or the Holocaust, or whatever name we may like to take it, uh, then people become furious. They just quote the meeting, but see, meeting what this meeting between Hitler and Mufti does is it gives you the idea of the chemistry both of them held for each other. That is what meeting makes it very clear. And then it also gives you a sign that yes, this man was very much into the Nazi affairs. He was very much into it. And what's very interesting is that when Germany was going quite bad in the World War in 1944 onwards, when the things were not going, they were going south for them. It was not too good, and German Air Force was getting reluctant to bomb Tel Aviv. But it's Grand Mufti who's constantly pushing the Germans, the Nazis, that hey, you have to bomb Tel Aviv. So even Nazis were outshined by this man, Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, because it was not about the survival, it was not about the war battle, it was very ideological and religious battle. But Grand Mufti had picked up, it was very personal. When I say personal, it I mean to relate it with religion. It was very religious, while for Nazis it became a bit pragmatic later on, that we are not going to bomb Tel Aviv right now because of the war based situation. It's not going to happen, Mufti, please shut up. He was told twice, but he was still constantly pushing that you have to bomb Tel Aviv, you have to bomb. So it happened. And it's all in the record. It's not that something which is just coming out of any WhatsApp forward or anything as such.